Researcher Paul Stonehill has done extensive work chronicling UFO sightings in the former Soviet Union.
I would say that the most serious research was given the impetus by Stalin in the 1940s when he found out about Roswell. It was then that the KGB and the military separately had initiated studies of UFOs. The KGB, as far as we know, had never ceased studying them.
This Soviet Air Force footage was obtained by a group of Russian ufologists. It was declassified by the USSR's Ministry of Defense just before Boris Yeltsin took power. What we are looking at is a view from the cockpit camera of a MiG-23 Flogger, scrambled to intercept two unknown targets. What we see now is an apparent merging of the two targets. Here is the same shot slowed down. These are obviously not typical flight characteristics of NATO or any other conventional aircraft. The MiG lost visual contact with this object or objects, and there has never been any official identification. The next clip was shot from a MiG-25 Foxbat, and what we're about to see is actually an American F-16 Falcon about 200 meters away. What happens next is that a new object appears from behind the clouds that was not identifiable. The new object suddenly descends and disappears into the clouds. Once again, here is the American plane at the same altitude as the MiG. And now here is the object as it appears behind the F-16. And here it emerges from behind the F-16, then goes down and enters the cloud bank.
In this case, neither the Soviets nor the Americans seem to have any clue as to what this third object is. I'm telling you, even when you blow it up, it's impossible to identify. It appears to be about 4 or 5 meters across, moves with characteristics unlike any conventional plane.
Now, in this final piece of footage, we will once again be looking at a cockpit camera view, this time from a MiG-21. The camera plane and 3 others were scrambled to intercept an unknown craft flying at very high speed, which is visible here as a large, cylindrical-shaped object. And as the Russian planes close in, the UFO suddenly picks up speed and disappears. Here it is once again. You'll notice the cylinder seems to be traveling at about the same speed as the MiGs until about here. And then it seems to increase its speed, which, according to pilots, must have reached at least Mach 3 in about 10 seconds.
A lot of this footage was declassified after the Soviet military failed to identify the object seen here. This one shows an interception attempt by MiG pilots. There were many cylindrical object interceptions that were reported and investigated. We were interested in the high-speed potential of these objects. The size of this one is estimated to be about twice the size of a MiG-21. With technology available to us and the Americans, it should not be able to move as fast as it does.
Hey, this footage is still interesting because I don't think the Russians had any idea what they were dealing with here. Their fighters were at least as good as ours, and yet here is something that is completely beyond their capability to intercept. The acceleration rate of this thing is impossible for any aircraft that we know of.
There was one tragic incident I know of occurring in the early 1970s, in which MiG-21s tried to shoot down an unknown craft flying over Western Russian airspace, which failed to respond to Soviet pilots. The pilots used standard intercept procedure to expel foreign planes out of Soviet airspace. When the craft did not respond, the pilots were ordered to lock on missiles. At that point, both jets were destroyed by some weapon not known to Soviet military. Both pilots perished. There was an effort within the Air Force to make it look as if the fighter planes collided, but investigators I knew personally at the time said it was not collision. They were shot down by something.
The NSA intercepted a radio transmission that we were copied on. Apparently the Russians lost a couple of MiG-21s or 23s. They were trying to intercept something unidentified. All I know is it wasn't one of ours.
This is a copy of the Sverdlovsk newspaper from November the 29th, 1968. An article on the front page entitled Berezovsky Dreams, or What Was That?, gives the state's sanctioned account of what could have been the actual crash. Translated, the Russian copy reads, 5 glowing balls of light appeared over the horizon and started to move in the direction of the city. 4 of the objects moved in opposite directions, while the 5th began to rapidly lose altitude and soon completely disappeared behind the forest terrain. Several seconds after its disappearance, there was a deafening explosion. And in typical Soviet fashion, the paper cites the official statement. The blast had taken place at the grain storage unit number 27. The explosion was caused by one of the employees who had violated a safety code, resulting in a charge of negligence. He was sentenced to restitution of the material losses suffered by the state. What helps make the account in Vereshchagin's book so compelling is the existence of several reels of film which seem to back up the story. While rumors of such film first began circulating some years ago, it was not until Vereshchagin led us to the black market dealer in possession of these materials that we got our first look at what could be remarkable new evidence. If this film indeed corresponds with Vereshchagin's story, what we are looking at is the scene of the crash site in Berezovsky as viewed by a camera on top of a military truck. The focal point of this scene is here, and indeed appears to be a disc embedded in the ground. Here we see soldiers exiting the truck, led by a captain. The troops are met by another officer, this one a major, and then they join other soldiers and officers already on the scene. This footage is one of 4 reels of film acquired during our investigation. This film footage certainly seems to depict interest by Russian military personnel in the object that is seen sticking out of the ground. Soldiers, officers, and civilian-clothed agents are deployed around the site, and they appear to be both guarding and examining the object. This is what we found on one of the 4 reels of film obtained in Russia. After viewing the footage, we were able to determine that it was most likely shot with 2 separate cameras. One apparently a handheld camera, which starts out on the approaching truck, and a second one seen here on a tripod. As the soldiers march past, you can see the cameraman turn to follow the troops. Here we cut to the other angle, the point of view from the tripod camera. And here you see the handheld camera as the truck pulls up. Both cameras change vantage points several times during the filming, as if to get better views, or perhaps under orders of a superior. From this angle, we see yet more troops arrive. Author Veniamin Vereshchagin describes the event.
Весной же 1969 года рабочий местного совхоза.
In the spring of 1969, a collective farmer found some strange remains in the forest not far from Berezovsky.
Были найдены.
After close examination of the place, they found some wreckage debris of a disc-shaped object
Частично.
partially sunk into the ground.
And here you see the man who is probably the head KGB agent directing the cameraman to point his camera toward the disc. A total of almost 1,200 feet of negative were recovered just on this crash site. It is possible that more film was shot, but this is all that we were able to obtain. None of this film depicts the removal of the disc itself, and at no point do we see inside the object. From this angle, we do see the handheld camera shooting behind or inside the disc. However, that footage, if it was in fact ever shot, was not included in the cans of film we acquired. We can only speculate that it may still be at large. We must also speculate on how the object ended up here. Based on information from Vereshchagin's book and what we can see in this footage, we have created this computer-animated version of how researchers believe the crash may have occurred. The questions then become, Where did this object come from and how did it come to crash here? And more importantly, what has happened to it since?